once I was in the financial space and I was making a lot of money, I went and like, because I thought that was the path.
Yeah.
The path was like, if I had a certain house, if I was married, if I had all these things, then I would be happy. That's kind of like what I grew up with. And like, I grew up with a single mom pretty much. So we would drive around the neighborhoods where I grew up in, and she'd be like, oh, imagine what it would be like living in that house. And like, boom, I bought that house.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Ultimate Ambitions. And today I have multiple guests, and you're going to see why, because we're kind of doing a little bit of a generational gap here. And I know that some of you listening and watching are a little bit younger than me. So I wanted to also do this because we have that voice from maybe the generation that you're in. But so I have Danielle Sabrina here and her daughter Morgan. And you have such an interesting story, and I want to share that because obviously it's nice to see people who have kind of started at one level and kept pushing and growing and pushing and growing to get to that next level. But your path there probably wasn't normal and wasn't easy, and for a lot of people it isn't, but your journey was a little bit unique. So you're from New Hampshire?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me, what did you start out, like what you're doing today, was that always like part of your vision?
Oh, God, no.
Okay.
I really didn't have a vision, to be honest. I was a teen mom, high school dropout. And then I went on to become one of the youngest traders on Wall Street when I was 19.
What?
Yeah, I'm the queen of Rebirth. So, obviously being like a teen mom, high schoul dropout, I'll just paint the picture, like it just wasn't a pretty like path for me. I spent a lot of time in group homes. I just was going down a really bad path. Got pregnant. And then I had both my kids by the time I was 19 also. And I just realized I was like, I didn't want them to have the life that it looked like I was going to be for me. You know, I worked at this kid's shoe store, and I was asking the manager there, and I'm like, I'm pregnant. He made me tuck my shirt in. I was wearing these ugly maternity clothes. Like there's no cool maternity clothes. And I'm so embarrassed anyways, because it's at the mall, and I'm like, oh, how many people are going to walk by and recognize me? And I'm just like, I'm really pregnant. Right. So I'm just asking him, I'm like, well, what do I need to do to like move up? I'm making minimum wage, and I'm just like looking at what things really cost. Cause now all of a sudden, like there's necessities versus like you can just make it by with nothing when you're by yourself and you're a teenager. You just need to like eat pretty much. And I was just like, I just don't know how I'm going to make this work. Like how can I can't even survive on this. And the manager at the time was like, great now, but he was like, you will never become anything more than you are right now. At the very most, he's like, maybe you could be a secretary. So you're not going to be moving up here. You have to have a degree. He's like, you can't, like what you are right now that's it. He's like, you dropped out of high school. You don't have a college degree, just like throwing all this stuff at me. And I left the store and I went out in my car and I just started crying. And I was just like,
that is awful.
I know, it really was.
Like even if he thought that, for him to vocalize that to you. He
obviously believed it.
For him to vocalize it to you is like whole nother level of like cold.
And projection.
Yeah. Wow.
So then I was just like, okay, I was just like, no, this isn't going to happen. And I created a resume. I like put all my skills there that just came naturally for me because I really didn't have much of a job history. And I just started calling Fidelity, actually, investments. And I called like every single day. And I was like, do you have a position for me? Like, because I got in touch with like she would just like answered the phones. I don't even know exactly who she was, but I would call like every day. I'm like, if I could just even get into the mailroom, I was like, I will work my way up. I just know I will every day. And she's just like, no, and finally I was just like, I'm just going to let this go. I'm going to let it go. It's been like a couple of months of me like persistently calling. And I was like, I'm going to call one more time. I called and she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you called. I wrote down your number. I don't know where I put it, but in the building next door, they're hiring for equity traders. And if you can pass this exam called the Series 7, which at the time was the third hardest exam in the United States, you will get hired here and I can at least get you an interview. So got an interview, got hired, got an opportunity to take the exam. I passed the exam and I was like, okay, like you will not tell me anything from this day forward about what I can or can't do, period.
Can I pause there?
Yeah, sorry.
So I went to school in New York City, friends with a lot of traders who failed that exam
Thank you. It's
multiple times. And these are smart dudes. And they failed multiple times. You kind of just breezed into past it. Like how long did you study?
I studied all the time, and it was the hardest I've ever worked in my life because I had two really young daughters. One of them was 6 months old. And then Morgan was like a year and a half older than that. So I'm like, I was, not to be too much information, but I was breastfeeding my younger daughter still. So I was like up all night breastfeeding. My shift that I had at Fidelity started at 5 a.m. So I needed to leave my house at 3:30. I don't know how I got through it, but I would just study. So from the time my shift ended, I would just study.
Yeah.
Study. I would go home, take care of my kids, study, take the test, and just like
practice tests. Yeah.
Yeah, their practice tests, and just stuck with it. But passing that, and I was also with other people who had graduated from like Harvard and Brown, and they didn't pass.
Oh.
So I was like, yes, like that just told me so much about what is possible.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just like rapidly moved up in corporate. I got recruited. Trading, I did not like. I stuck with it for a couple of years, but it was just like I had zero interest in trading. And even in the financial market, I just was really good at whatever job I was given.
Okay.
I crushed whatever job. So even if I didn't like it, I would find a way to be good at it.
So there was no interest in stock trading. You were just like, this is an opportunity. I'm going to take it.
Yeah, I never knew what the Dow was at. People, I'd be like, I have no idea. I'd have to look. Like I really had zero interest at all. Like people would try to talk to me about like their portfolios and stuff, and I'm just like, what do you want to trade?
Yeah. So now, when you had to go to work, who was watching the girls?
They went to daycare.
Okay. And you had to, obviously that's a cost. That's an expense now too.
For a while, my salary and what I paid for daycare was like pretty much the same.
Okay.
But I knew, and everyone in my family too, and then like their dad's family was like, why are you, like made me, I felt really guilty because they were like, why are you going to work when this costs basically the same?
Yeah.
But I'm like, hello, not forever.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that also helped me. I've always just been one, I think like my defiance that didn't serve me well got me in a lot of trouble. But my passion for something I want is like, if I'm on the right track, like you will not stop me. I will not fail. I have yet to fail. I've had some like hiccups and I've had to start over and rebuild because I was like building on a shaky foundation internally. But like, I will always achieve what I set out to achieve.
Yeah. So where were you living at this time?
I was living with her dad.
Okay. All right. He was helping. He was in the picture, or was he supportive of what you were doing?
He wasn't unsupportive. It was, it was just, I was with him since I was like 14 years old. Okay. So it was just kind of like, we were two different people, and that's just, we grew apart very quickly. Okay. The second I just started evolving. And then, that was once I was in the financial space and I was making a lot of money, I went and like, cause I thought that was the path. Yeah. The path was like, if I had a certain house, if I was married, if I had all these things, then I would be happy. That's kind of like what I grew up with. And like, I grew up with a single mom pretty much. So we would drive around the neighborhoods where I grew up in, and she'd be like, oh, imagine what it would be like living in that house. And like, boom, I bought that house.
No.
Yeah. And I was like, I still wasn't happy though.
Happiness comes before money. Not money, then happiness.
Right.
Happiness
if it happens the other way, it's not a vibe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like, they had everything they wanted. Like my daughters, we had a big, beautiful house. We got to go on vacations, all this stuff. But inside I felt like I was dying still.
So you're moving up at the company, and then you're like, okay, yeah, this isn't for me. So then what was the trigger that said, I got to get out of this?
It just became too much. Like no matter what, like there was I kept hitting a lot of ceilings as well. Like every time I would, work somewhere, it was like, I can grow things so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you know, some people will be like, yeah, I want to grow. I want to do this.
Yeah.
But then when they have that growth, you'll be surprised like how quickly they like want to pedal backwards because it's scary for them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I remember one company I was with, the owner of the company was like, I was like, what is your dream revenue?
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, it was a few million or something. I don't remember exactly, but I was like, okay, that's it. Like if we get there, like that's the goal, right? Yeah. And I think he always just thought it was like a pipe dream.
Mm-hmm.
And we got there quick.
No kidding.
And because I think unlocking revenue opportunities, a lot of that, being in the financial space, I saw so many companies grow and fail.
Okay.
So I got to see that firsthand from like a behind the scenes perspective because we'd be working with the owners of the company sometimes.
Yeah.
And I would see how different dynamics played. And I've also been naturally just very drawn to business. Even when I was pregnant, all my friends were out partying and I was at Barnes & Noble's reading.
What was that spawn from?
I don't know.
Because that's not normal for a young girl that age at Barnes & Noble's reading like business books.
No, I mean, before I was pregnant, I was not at Barnes & Noble's.
Yeah. But then it happened and
right.
You're like, I gotta.
I mean, the second I found I was pregnant, literally, like, I was like, okay, I quit anything that I'm not supposed to be doing.
And I need knowledge.
No coffee, no cigarettes, no alcohol, no drugs, nothing. Like, literally the second I saw that I was pregnant.
No kidding.
And then I was, like, on a path.
Yeah.
I was either reading about being a parent, reading about parenting, reading about business, and I had to go there to read because I didn't have money to buy any of the books.
Mm-hmm. I did the same thing. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I did this. Single mom, no money, we were broke, so that's what I did. She would drop me off there and leave me there.
There's a special feeling about shout out Barnes and Nobles.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I love it.
We should buy Barnes and Nobles one day.
Oh my! It was such an integral part. Like when you're a single parent, and you know, it was a place for my mom to leave me that she felt safe.
Oh right, yeah.
You know, she felt safe, and I could just spend hours there.
Yeah, I can now today too.
Today, same thing.
I love it.
Yeah, same thing. They have like Starbucks in there now. I'm like, what? That was a great idea. Who came up with that? You know, so now I can stay there even longer. Like get snacks and sustain like life.
Yeah.
So what you experienced and what you saw, I heard in there that you said you also saw companies fail. Mm-hmm. So was that the kind of the beginning of where you started noticing about what companies needed to do to succeed, what they were doing that was hurting themselves? Like, was that the beginnings of that?
Yeah, it was sort of parallel in what I was doing because in the financial space, compliance is such a roadblock. Like anything you want to do, like the compliance around most like financial institutions are so archaic that like any marketing initiative gets shut down immediately. Yeah. Like they don't even understand it. So I had to come up with super creative ways to market like the firm.
Yeah.
That were not traditional. So I would be doing that. And then sometimes I would be telling a client like, oh, you should do this because they had this type of business. And I would see how that would play out. Mm-hmm. Or I would see when like things were going when things are going left. And I think a lot of information I just get intuitively.
Okay.
I think that I can just sometimes channel information. That's because I just have information that I don't know why or how. And it's just there. And it's just like, I know I can see things.
Yeah.
And
I want to pause there for a second because a lot of people who don't know about the financial world, there's a lot of guidelines that are in place. I was in the financial world for a part of my life, and I remember one time I wanted to have a function, like a little party, and I had the whole party planned. I had everything set up, and I was going to bring in clients, and clients were going to bring their friends and family. And in the final hours, someone from compliance from the insurance company came in and said, the cost of your party exceeds like X dollar amount allowed for gifting per client that you're here. You can't have this party. And I had paid for stuff already.
I know.
And I was like, wait, what is it? And they're like $40. Like it was some insane low number that you couldn't exceed in gifts for a client in a calendar year. And I had to like cancel it. I was like, what? This is like insane. Like I see people entertaining people on boats and like on, Wall Street guys going out to big dinners. And they're like, sorry, you can't have this party. It was so wild. So yeah, marketing in that world is very different because anything else, there is no regulation. You could spend $1 million on a party.
Yeah, you can say anything you want. You can do anything.
You can give people gift bags worth $5,000 and you're like,
you can make all kinds of promises.
Yeah, right. So you're navigating that. So you kind of have to be a little creative in that time.
Super creative.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is also pre like there was really like barely anything online, you know, so everything it was just like everyone was just starting to modernize their businesses and everything. So yeah, I feel like it gave me a boot camp.
Okay. All right. So now you're progressing from there to.
Yeah. And then I just was like, this can't be it. And I wanted to leave. And then the owner of the firm obviously didn't want to lose me and was like, let's partner. Like, I'll tell you some of the business. And I was like, I will never own this. Because I was just like, this isn't it for me. Like, it's not fun. I don't like it. I don't want it. I don't, like, it's just, I knew it wasn't it for me. And so I just didn't know what was. That's the hardest thing. And I think that I think a lot of people relate to this is that I just had so many interests and I knew I wanted to do something on my own. But like what? When your only experience is in the financial industry?
Yeah.
Like it's not like I even had any other experience. And all of my business experience, because people be like, oh, you should be a business consultant. It was just so like, I had no idea how to go about doing that. And then I was like, but I've never done that before. But it's like, I was,
Yeah.
And then I had to leave. Like I had to just leave. Like I had to leave. I needed to like take a break from that and just try to figure something out. And I opened up some retail boutiques, and I also found out quickly that was not what I wanted to do. I was like, because I'm like, okay, what am I passionate about? And at the time, like I'm still in my 20s. Yeah. So I'm like makeup and skincare.
Right. What?
Like,
yeah.
So I'm like, let me open up like some little Sephoras. But retail is horrible. I had no idea how to do retail.
That's
and
awful.
Like having a brick and mortar location also was not the vibe for me. Like quickly that went bad. And at the same time, I started going through a really messy divorce.
Okay.
Really messy. And I had like a nervous breakdown basically. And I just like walked away and lost everything. Like I ended up having to file bankruptcy. I owed the IRS like $500,000. Like I was getting fined because I wasn't answering letters and like just, it was just a mess. My life was like it was such a mess that I just didn't know how to move forward because I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't know how to dig myself out because I didn't want to go back to where I was. I didn't want to go back to any of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to me, which is the case usually when you hit rock bottom.
The worst thing that ever happened to you was the best thing that ever happened to you. Yep.
But think of where I was.
So how old are you roughly at this point?
I think I was like 24, 25.
You're a baby.
Yeah.
You're a baby.
Yeah. Okay. And like, I'm just like horrible divorce, really, really messy and just like super traumatic for my kids, drawn out way too long, just terrible. And then I'm also like, I don't have any coping skills because I never developed the coping skills ever in life. That's why I was where I was.
Yeah.
I had no coping skills. So once I lost everything and then I ended up in this shitty apartment, that was the worst place I've ever lived. Like it was just worse. It was worse than when I was like pregnant. I'm like, what happened? Like
how'd I fall to this level?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I just was like, I was suicidal. It was like terrible.
And how old are you at this point?
At the point of the story?
At the point here.
10, 11 maybe.
11.
Yeah.
11.
So did you were feeling this? Like you were like you're old enough to like feel a divorce and feel like what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was bad. We moved to like a really bad area, not where like we moved out of the town we were in.
In New Hampshire?
Yeah. Into this like really bad area in Manchester, which was like there's always like shootings and drugs and like it's just dangerous.
I feel like it was rock bottom for every single person in our family.
Yeah.
We all had our own versions of the same feeling of like
we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then like I said, I was suicidal and I was just like, I need to like get some help. And so like I checked myself into like a mental hospital. And while I was in there, which I've never told this story before.
This
is the first time.
The fact that you checked yourself in and no one had to like commit you and now you have children, the fact that you did that. Wow. That must have been incredibly hard.
I mean, at the time, I'm not embarrassed by it now, but at the time it felt really embarrassing. But I just knew that like I knew where I was at, and I knew it was a really dangerous space.
Yeah.
And I knew that like I just knew it was something that like I needed to address with myself. While that happened, I ended up getting my sister like comes, and she was like, Morgan got attacked at school. She was like brutally beaten up by this older boy who was like, she had just turned 12 and this boy was 16, knocked her teeth out, unconscious, like really, really bad. And this happened. She was bullied so bad in school that I never knew, but the school knew and the principals were aware of it.
Yeah.
So my sister comes, I'm like, check me out. I'm done. Like healed. Let's go. Like, I'm ready to like.
That's that mama kicking in.
Yeah. So we left. Go to the hospital, go to the hospital. She like, it was just horrible. It was horrible to see all her teeth knocked out and what had happened. And then just more and more information kept surfacing about like how much the school knew about her bullying. And no one ever told me.
What?
No. And she went to the principal and was like asked for help and protection.
Yeah.
And then the principal ended up suspending this kid and putting them in the same cafeteria right after he suspended this kid. And this kid was too old to be around her anyway in the school.
Yeah.
The school immediately started covering up the incident. The principal was like, I never had record of that. I never knew. Like just lies. Like flat out lies.
Wow.
So I was like, I'm like, how do I get this out? This is so unfair. To just find out that could have been preventable.
Yeah.
I think where we grew up in this situation, everyone was experiencing a lot of trauma collectively.
Okay.
So I just think that like kids with not a lot of parenting, and including myself at the time, like we're kind of just like running wild, doing whatever we want.
Yeah.
Unsupervised a lot of the times. And I think that like, honestly, I don't really know where it all started. We just kind of started hating on each other. I don't really know where it started. I think it originally started on just like playful flirtation, but we're so young that like it starts to be kind of like not. Honestly,
well, and also the age difference is huge.
Well,
too.
he was 16
and she
and
just turned
12.
12. She had just turned 12.
So how were you in the same building at that point?
They
shouldn't have been.
We don't know why. He was we went on the same bus together. I honestly don't know how it started. Honestly, the whole life section was kind of a blur for me.
Yeah.
Honestly.
The place where you went for your mental health at that point.
Well, the day that it happened. After that, though, I was out.
So at that point, who was watching you?
My aunt was, but she worked nights because she.
Did she have any idea that there was any kind of thing going on at school?
No, I didn't want to tell anyone because she was going through a lot. My whole family was kind of going through a lot, so I didn't really want my family involved. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like, I had a friend of mine who like saw the messages between us, and she was like, "Girl, if you don't tell them, I will." And I was like, "Okay, I guess we'll just talk to somebody about it." And I talked to the guidance counselor twice. She talked to the principal. I don't know how many times. And then I had gotten into like a previous fight on the bus prior to this happening. And so the principal had talked to me about that. And that's when I kind of spoke to him about everything. And then things just like spiraled so quickly out of control within like days. It just turned into just a huge thing.
For a 16-year-old teenage boy to put his hands on a 12-year-old girl, that is like insane.
Yeah, so he knocked out my 2 front teeth, cracked the tube next to it in the middle of the cafeteria. It was like such a dramatic thing.
Wow.
And knocked her out unconscious. So she had a really bad concussion for a long time. It was a long healing journey for sure.
What happened to him?
Physically.
He was arrested or what happened? Nothing.
We both got expelled from the school and he moved to a different state in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was so angry about like
there was so much things too. Like there was like this cop who like had said that he had gotten like a statement from me and he never spoke to me. So there was a lot of lying and covering up going on behind the scenes with like, it had to do with the school not trying to bring attention to what the school was doing behind the scenes, which was, I don't even know what, but there was.
Right. And there were certain resources supposed to be put in place and like there was there's not there. There was a lot of corruption, a lot of like, it was, and I just felt like I was like fighting an uphill battle. So
So you get out, you get your sister
once I know that she's stable. Yeah. Once I know she's stable, we get home. I'm like Googling, I'm like, how to publish a document online? Because I'm like, I want my story like this. I got to get this out. I need people to help me because I don't have money right now. Mm-hmm. Like at this time in my life, I do not have money. I have nothing, like nothing. Right. So I'm like, I don't know. I just felt so powerless that I was like, but I know like this is not okay. Yeah. And everybody wanted to like sweep it under the rug. I'm doing all of this coordinating because I'm like, I need this to be at like a national level. Yeah. And I knew if I got like the local stations that had like a lot of like those were the go-to like, news stations that everyone in the state watched. And so I like was very strategic with that. It just, I don't know how, or it just came naturally. Then I got like Dr. Phil wanted to have her on. Like it turned into a huge thing. Parents were supporting her. They were picketing outside the school. And I just wouldn't back off. I was like, I'm recording this conversation. I'm publishing it on the blog. Like, I just kept hitting them over and over. Yeah. And I felt like I just was like I think in retrospect, it might've been kind of traumatic for you because it was so public. Yeah. But I wanted justice.
Was it?
Yeah, I hated every second of this. I wanted to not talk about it ever at all. I also wanted to sweep it under the rug because I'm literally like 11. I had just turned 12 the month before it happened. And like, to me, I was like, I can't.
The whole world is seeing that like I got beat up. And this whole thing.
It was so embarrassing for me at the time.
Yeah.
This is actually my first time talking about this.
I know, I was going to say, we're going to have to talk about this after and make sure this is okay because she's never talked about this story before.
Before we continue, in hindsight, do you realize that was probably a really good thing that may have saved other people?
Well, yeah, maybe that. But I think the thing that I like the most about what happened to it, or I see like the silver lining of it, is like that was like, I think the catapult of like healing our family together. Because the first year, a couple of years after that happened, it was still really crazy and like traumatizing. But like that's what catapulted all of us to like start going to where we are like now. Yeah.
So you just organically were like, I'm going to get this out here and I'm going to elevate this story and get it to like a national headline level. But you had no PR skills or you were just figuring it out.
Yep, I was just figuring it out.
I heard you say like, I want it on this news time.
Yeah.
Like, how did you know that?
I don't know. I just knew like if I get it on this, it's going to ignite a reaction in this area that I can then use to like move this other reaction. And I knew like, I was like putting numbers. I'm like, everyone call this station, ask them to like air this story. Yeah. Like I just started building this like community of people that supported us. And eventually Morgan's Law was presented to the Supreme Court. So it was actually like turned into, it's still, I think it's still kind of like lingering, getting presented there, but it did like actually like turn into something.
No. And what was the premise of that?
Bullying. So it's like laws around
what
bullying.
Had to be reported. Yes, or what had to be done.
Yes, exactly. What happened to be what had to be reported. Because it was also really unfair because I didn't have any money. She's all messed up, and like this stuff is extremely expensive. Like I have spent.
We probably spent several $100,000.
Yeah, literally. Wow. She just had we're still working on her teeth.
I just finished the last step literally like 3 months ago.
Are you kidding?
I'm not kidding.
No, because at the time she wasn't done developing. So there's only so much you can't do implants. You can't. There's a lot of like restrictions of what you can do. Yeah. And so you had to see if like the root canals would take. You know, like there's a lot of like waiting, and then like, oh, we can do this. We can't, we had to wait for like advancements in dentistry really to be able to like, it was like every extra dollar I had.
Oh, I know. One of my very good friends is an oral surgeon. Yeah. And like, I go to his house. I'm like, bro, your house is bigger than my high school. Like, what do you do?
Yeah. He's like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, you have a beautiful smile now. So like, hey, it's great. Wow. So what next?
Then I was like, seeing that happen to Morgan, I felt like my drive is always just to be the best parent possible and to give my kids the most opportunity. That's even why I'm like, do what I do, what I have, what it truly is for them. Yeah. So we can have a great life. Because I feel like there's a lot of other much easier paths you can take. Mm-hmm. Like I could just marry rich.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like we're gonna be real. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to build a business. Yeah. But I felt like I failed, and I really tried since the day I found out I was pregnant to be the best parent possible. Like I took parenting classes. I I used to teach preschool for a little bit, like just to learn how to be a parent, you know. So I took a lot of pride in my parenting, and to feel like I failed them was just, especially her, like horrible feeling. So I was like, okay, I'm going to rebuild, but I cannot build on this foundation. I can't. It's not solid. I had a lot of beliefs that were like causing issues in my life, just like limiting beliefs, toxic beliefs, and just like my interactions and relationships with people, and like no boundaries. You know, I had zero boundaries. So it was just like fighting a lot, or just like not being able to really be grounded and know the direction. And still, I don't know what I'm doing in life yet. But I just started, you know, praying, and I started reading. Like I really shifted my focus into learning psychology, like every aspect of it. So I could understand like better how like my brain works, how other people's brains work, how their behavior might be influenced by their past. I learned different techniques that I could use with people communicating, like DBT therapy, and just different things that I could have like as a skill set for communication. And I studied Buddhism. And then I got into like mindfulness, and, you know, obviously like manifesting, that's like the fun part, but really just worked on changing my brain. Changing my brain waves, changing how I perceive the world. And then things started shifting. And one day, like I decided I was carrying around, like I had this garage full of just stuff from my house, and it was all like really nice, expensive furniture. And I didn't want to get rid of it because I didn't have any money, but it was like, I had to really come to the realization, like, I probably won't be in a big enough house to have all this stuff that's just like stacked up. And so I took it all and I donated it. And I was like walking down this like place called Savers. It's like a Goodwill, I guess. And this book like flies off the shelf in front of me. It was like the crazy, I'm just walking and this book just like flies off the shelf. And I'm like someone threw it at me. Right. And I'm like, I'm looking around, but like there's no one near me because I'm just like kind of aimlessly walking down the aisle, like just letting it in, you know, like, okay, I just like gave away every last piece of valuable thing I might feel like I have,
Can I
you
stop
know?
you there?
Yeah.
Why don't you sell it?
It's like really hard. I mean, I'm in New Hampshire. People just don't like, I just felt like it wasn't, I think I maybe tried to have like a yard sale and I didn't really.
Work, so you're like, I'm just going to give it away.
Right. It's not like here, a bigger city, you know, you can do like, you know, it's like all you could do is like Craigslist or like you know, it wasn't the same. And it also like, there just was so much energy held to those things that I was just like, I need to, like, I mean, they're going to sell all of this for like $100 or something tiny, you know, compared to what it is, or just like move on. Yeah. No, I mean, it was hard because it was like really nice stuff that I worked hard for.
Sure. Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes just letting it go, that's like that's what you got to do things in life with feelings, emotions, events. You just got to let it go and move on.
Yep.
So what was the book that flew out?
The Celestian Prophecy.
The what?
The Celestian Prophecy. Have you ever heard of it?
I've never heard of it.
You'll have to watch. There's a movie too.
Really?
Yeah. And so I'm like reading it, and it talks a lot about like energy and how you can like shift energy and change it, and how like, you know, like how energy works basically. I'm
a big fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you know.
Yeah. So
I got into all that from Dr. Joe, but go ahead.
Yeah, I like stumbled on him too, you know. You should, side note, go to the Monroe Institute.
Oh, really?
If you haven't, never.
No, I've never.
It is like, he went there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's like one of my favorite things to study at Monroe Institute today. Oh. So I try to do like 3 or 4 classes a year there.
Oh, I'm 100% checking it out.
You will, like, your life will change.
So you read the book.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I was hooked. And then I just couldn't get my hands on enough of this like energy and how the world works. And then I was still studying Buddhism, and like things started to shift within me.
Yeah.
And then I just started like easing into life. Because my circumstances hadn't changed yet, but I was like, okay, I need to repair my relationships. So I repaired my relationship, where I started the repair process with my daughters. Because obviously, like, I'm at the time, it's like I want to be a good mom, and I think I'm a good mom, but I'm doing a lot of like really toxic things. And I was a teenager. A teenager raising kids, like not like you can probably just like imagine.
Yeah.
And so I knew that would be a long process because I knew it was something that they needed to see versus me telling them.
Yeah.
So I just had to like be patient and just continue showing them and apologize for the things that where I went wrong. And like, you know, I'm like, I'm sorry I did that, or I'm sorry I treated you that way. I didn't know at the time or whatever, you know, but I'm sorry regardless. And then I just was like patient to just let them like see.
So she was watching you grow up and you were watching her grow up.
Yeah. And yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So then what was the turning point?
Things started just getting really good. Like I got this check in the mail. Like I feel like I'm one of those like law of attraction like poster childs because I'm like, these things are freaking real.
Yeah.
I get this like random check in the mail for like $30,000.
What?
Life-changing money for me at the time.
Yeah.
From like a house I had owned. My first house I owned, there was some sort of like, I don't even know, it was like some sort of insurance lawsuit sort of thing that happened as a class action or something with the mortgage. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But it was like, I even called because I'm like, is this real?
No,
it's really mine because I'm about to like go and, well, I'm like, don't try to take this from me after.
Yeah.
And slowly like little things like that just kept happening to me. And it was only, so I immediately associated success with healing. Because I was still healing and I was like, I am going to fix every broken piece inside me. Like I am on a mission. Like I'm going to pass my Series 7. Like, that was the kind of mission that I was like, and I was so willing to just lift the veil of everything and go to all the painful places that were so painful to go to.
Yeah.
And I just sat with them.
Okay.
And I didn't like distract myself or leave until that transformed.
Wow.
And I would just see it.
Yeah.
And then one day, like, I feel like my healing took like such a big jump one day when I was like, it was a long, like 3 days of crying in bed.
Yeah.
I just was like straight crying. And I finally was done crying. And I was like, all of a sudden my room was like filled with rainbows. Like I had like one of those like
a prism, like a little crystal.
Yeah. And ever since that day, rainbows are one of my primary angel signs.
No kidding.
Like, and they'll just show up, and I have pictures of them, and I have like, it'll just be random, like there'll be a rainbow, and I'll be like, oh my God, look, it's a rainbow, and there's no reason there's a rainbow.
Right. It didn't just finish raining or anything.
Yeah, like that. No, it will just be on things. It could be on like anything. It could be on a surface. It could just be on, and magical things like that have happened to me and continue to happen to me to this day. Like I will probably have like a book of all these like magical things that have happened.
Yeah.
And then I love that today where everyone's becoming more open to this stuff and that it's real and like you're not crazy. But back then it did sound crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because even back then, like Joe Dispenza was not like a huge name.
No.
He was just starting to like make his mark, and his like content was still like considered very woo-woo.
Yeah.
When now it's like all the top performers are like Joe Dispenza. And I'm like,
Asterix.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I was always like very intuitive in general. Like it was something that like once I learned how to like control and channel that and know what was like I'm channeling and what's not in my head, or, you know, just like things, and learning how to like navigate that. Then the first, I guess, sort of business I launched was like, I just put myself out there as a business intuitive. I didn't have any sort of agenda with it. I was just like, I'm a business intuitive. I'm going to give intuitive readings to anybody who wants them live in front of other people so they could like be my witness. And I did that, and I just kept doing it. I just kept doing it online in front of people. Like just, I didn't talk about it. I just did. I'm a big fan of like, I'm going to do this. Watch me.
Yeah.
And then you'll see.
Yeah.
And I just started sharing my thought leadership, and I just like my own thoughts and like my perspective of things. And like, I just started sharing that. And then Ariana Huffington came across one of my articles and asked me to write for the Huffington Post.
What?
And then that was like the beginning of the agency, the beginning of like, I was like, once I did that, I started getting press on myself. I started learning how to like pitch, and just like, obviously we know the power of media, right? Power of story is something that comes naturally to me too.
Yeah.
And that gave me an ability to like merge both like the intuitive stuff and like brand management, and just with clients. And I started getting my first clients. And it was just uphill from there. Now we have a multi-million-dollar agency, and it's just the start. I'm going to build $1 billion agency. I said it here.
That's it. That's it. So now we got to go into a part 2 because I know we got to close out.
I know.
Part 1. We got to get into a part, but that was incredible. So part 2, we're going to get into the agency and how you built it to where it is today. But I want to speak to you about you're seeing all this healing going on, but healing for a child in a situation like this is different from healing for a parent. I was going through the same thing, except my mom we're from India. She's from India. So like I had that Buddhism, and she was always more about connecting to energy and self. And she was always big on no one else can make you happy. You make you happy. No one else can hurt you. People will say things to you, but only you have to be offended by those things, or else if you're not, then it has no effect on what they're saying. Because I was in a all-white school, in an all-white town, and people were saying awful things to me. And I was like, I wanted to like run away. I wanted to cry. I wanted to hide. I didn't want to go to school. And it was awful, some of the things that people were saying to me. And there literally was no other kids that my skin color. So I wanted to just run and scream and hide. And she just kept saying, you can't let that affect you. That was her resolve. That was the best she could do. And she just had to go back to work. So, but you're going through this. And what were you thinking, feeling at this time? Because before we go into part 2, I want to know how you were managing that. Were you also now getting a little bit of what she was experiencing?
I was really resistant to everything at first. Mm-hmm. I didn't start getting into like the spiritual stuff that she's talking about until I was like 17 or 16.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I was really resistant to it. Her and I's relationship was kind of rocky at that point. Mm-hmm. And then once I kind of started getting into healing with her, our relationship kind of started to go crazy.
What was the tipping point of you going from, okay, there's still a rub here, to now the healing begins with her? What was that tipping point?
Well, I think for me, seeing her be this like best version of herself consistently for a while made me like trust that whatever she was talking about was like real.
Okay.
Because at first I was like, I don't know, you know.
Just another thing mom's doing.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess just like it took a while of just seeing her consistently doing it.
Yeah.
And seeing the things that kind of were transpiring through that. Mm-hmm. Then I kind of was like, okay, I guess I'll listen to Abraham Hicks too, or like whatever.
And I'm sure it's hard because when I was 17, if my mom played, Esther Hicks for me or Abraham, and I listened to it, I would have been like, Mom, are you crazy? And this woman's crazy. This woman she's thinking about, talking about is crazy. Like I wouldn't be like, it wouldn't be real for me.
Yeah.
So I can imagine at that age, it's pretty tough.
To me, I was like, this lady's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know what she's talking about, but she's crazy. I don't want to listen to it. She used to force me to listen to it. We used to drive to Boston once a week to do my teeth.
Yeah.
She'd like put it on the car. It's like an hour drive from where we were from.
Good.
It's like I was listening to it. I'm like, I need to be listening to this.
Yeah. Good. So that was it.
I don't know exactly what the turning point was, but I think it was a slow progression for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you started to recognize, okay, this is something.
Yeah, then I started to see my own little magic things happening for me, and then I was like, oh wow, this is really, really real.
Yeah. And then that ultimately led to you joining forces.
Yeah, I saw what she was building, and I was like, let me get up in this. Like, I need to be a part of this too.
Yeah.
She's actually transformed the agency where it's at today, literally because of her and her leadership abilities. So it's really cool to see her like exceed my abilities.
No kidding.
Like I took it as far as I could go with it. Like, but to see her now like be able to take that and grow, and how tuned in and tapped in she is to culture, and like taking care of our team and creating things for them that like foster growth and career paths, and be able to grow the agency that way. And also just like her authority is always spot on. Yeah. And how we deal with clients, and it's unlocked new revenue. It's tightened up our procedures. Like, yeah, I don't think I could hire that person. I don't think that would
have been possible.
No, she told me to run with it, and I was like, all right.
That's it.
Let's do it.
You created that.
Yep. I love it.
Yeah, you created that. Like that monster that's going after it. That's awesome. So we definitely have to do a part 2, because in the part 2, I want to actually let everyone know about the agency and the growth and how you actually made that happen. I want to end on this. There are, let's say, millions upon millions of women that are going through situations like you that probably have a daughter that is right there going along, experiencing with it. Before we close out, I want to let everyone know, like, to find out more about you, and if you want to share about, sharing your journey, where they can follow that. But you went through a position that would have broken a lot of women, and you endured a situation that would have broken a lot of young girls. But now here you guys are, doing what probably only 1% of Americans do, with creating something so incredible. And I want to start with you. There's a 17 or 16-year-old girl that is like having this situation with their mother, their father, their family, and they're going through something like this. What's one bit of advice you can give to the 17-year-old that's watching this, who can't stand their mom or hates their mom, and they hate the strife that is out there for a lot of teenage girls? What's one bit you can say you can provide them?
I think just like focus on yourself. You can't change what your parents do, what your situation is, but you can change the way that you see things, and the way that you feel things. So just focus on yourself.
I love it. And for you, for the women out there that are experiencing this, what's one thing you can say that this is the thing you got to look at and focus on? And because it's easy to say, "Oh, go read this book, go watch this movie, whatever," but internally,
to narrow down to one thing is hard. Probably be something similar to what Morgan said, where it's focus on yourself, but you got to stop blaming. It doesn't matter if the blame is correct or not. Like, you got to stop. You got to stop putting your focus there. It is what it is. Like, you have to really just look at yourself. Yeah. You have to see yourself first before you can see anyone else. And if you can't do that, it's going to be really difficult to change your external circumstances. So if you're too busy putting your life force energy into trying to change someone, fighting with them, just like going crazy. Yeah. You're going to end up in like a hamster wheel. Yeah. So just really focus on seeing yourself. You have to identify your flaws. You have to see your weaknesses. And probably, I know that's like more than one thing, but develop some coping skills.
That's huge.
You've got to have a tool set that you can go to while you're in this transitionary period where you're trying to figure out what to do or how to handle things. But lack of coping skills is so toxic for yourself and others.
That's one of the main things that's not taught to us.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm so excited to hear about the next evolution of the agency, which I know that everyone who's watching, they're like, how do I want to build this next $1 billion business, which you said $1 billion business, not like there's no doubt in that. No. It was like, it's going to be $1 billion business. Yeah. It was very matter of fact. And when I hear that, I'm like, oh, that's going to happen. Yeah, it will. That'll be the next episode.
I don't know when yet, but it will.
It's going to happen.
We're on the path.
Yeah. And you're going to use the same principles. It's not matter with matter. It's energy. Energy is going to create that. And that's awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Danielle, thank you so much. Morgan, thank you so much. Thank you for opening up. That I know it's not hard. It's hard. It's not easy. So, we're going to close here, but guys, how can they follow your journey? Like, what would you want to share with them if anyone wants to follow your journey? Socials, anything like that, website to learn more about the agency? What would you want to share?
The agency is society22pr.com. Okay. You can connect with me on Instagram. Is probably my favorite. It's Danielle Sabrina 7. Okay. And you're
Morgan Sabrina 06 is my Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah. So we'll list all that. We'll list the website. Thank you for watching. I know a little bit of a cliffhanger because we didn't even get to the best part of what they've created. But the journey is also the story you need to know before the success and the growth. So that's why I wanted to get their story out. So I promise you in part 2, we're going to get to what you created, which is incredible. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.